Well, this is a video response to Victor over at Bushcraft Ukraine. I'll put the link below. Check him out. Very good channel. A lot of interesting stuff. He was recently visiting a World War II graveyard. It looked like a company of soldiers were buried in his area there. Very interesting, very unique place. But he takes some interesting videos of his adventures up the Carpathian Mountains and that area, which is a very different area that I'm operating in. Hang on, let's have a look at Mr. Pelican. Say hello. Hello, Mr. Pelican. Do a shot here. Yep, he's looking nervous. He's looking nervous. He doesn't like the camera. I think he's deciding to leave. No, decided against it. And there's Mrs. Pelican right there. All right, back to where we were. So, and he tagged me with a question. When did you realise that the outdoors was for you? I believe that's how it was worded. So I'm taking it to mean, you know, when you finally realise that outdoor pursuits, the outdoorsy type things, are what your preferences are. And I think, well, they say many things are to do with equally with nurture and nature, but my earliest experiences outdoors actually were more to do with the sea than they were to do with the bush. One of my most memorable earliest outdoor adventures, and of course this is during the formative years, and it's things that kind of form you for later life, were fishing trips with my father. And we would go fishing on the southeast coast of England at a place called Sandwich. Yes, exactly, just like the sandwich that you eat. It's named after the Earl of Sandwich, or the Duke of Sandwich, who supposedly invented the sandwich because he was so fond of card playing, being a gambling man, that he didn't like to leave the table for meals, so he used to have his meals brought to him between two slices of bread, allegedly. So that was the Earl of Sandwich. Well, anyway, there's a place called Sandwich in England, and we would fish for cod in the winter along Sandwich Bay, which is a shingled beach with great terraces, some 25-30 feet high. They terrace from the shoreward side of the beach on down into the sea, and the terraces continue. They're essentially formed by the wave action. Well, the point of telling you that is that the sea gets very deep there very fast, so it's ideal to lay in wait for the cod. And I can remember as a boy of perhaps 8, certainly no older than 10, going on these trips with my father. We would take one of the pump-up kerosene lanterns, what we call a tilly. I know Coleman also do one, or did one. And we would light this thing up, dead of winter, very cold. The temperatures would certainly fall well below zero at night. I know this because I remember my father laying a cod out on the beach that he had caught, and when we came to leave and lifted the fish, it lifted the shingle stones with it. They were all frozen, literally frozen onto the fish. And we would see, some nights we would see all manner of weather. We'd get freezing rain, we'd get hailstones, and it would snow, sometimes all in the same night. It did one night. But anyway, so although that was my first outdoor experiences, and I was introduced to those by my father, and I miss that very much. Even actually to this day, just the smell and the sound that those pressurized lamps make take me back to those times. And actually I've got myself one of those lamps just for the sake of that, because I like they were kind of they were a source of warmth and light, and that low hiss that they make was a kind of companionship for the night there. But anyway, so that's my little story. That's my story about introduction to the outdoors, and I believe that that's what stayed with me right through. That's what kind of generated the interest, where you know there is more outside the four walls and TV, and it's great fun. There's a lot of adventure out there, but I think I really knew about the outdoors a bit later on in life, because you don't appreciate it when you're young. You're being introduced to it, it's all an adventure, but you don't realise that this is something that is of value that you will carry through your life until a bit later on. And I didn't really realise that probably until my late teens, I guess. Did a lot of camping. We had an abandoned railway embankment very close to where I used to live. I was always over there. It was full, it was very wooded. Always camping and fooling around in what's now called, the fashionable thing now, it's called bushcraft. It's really interesting actually. I'm glad that I was asked the question, because it's brought back a whole bunch of memories, a lot of things that hadn't come to mind in a long time. Let me tell you about punga crabbing. At about probably 8 or younger, my father would take me down in the summer when we weren't fishing for cod in the winter. In the summer we would go to a place called the Captain Digby, or Digby Bay. And these were great chalk cliffs, and as a result the foreshore was also chalk, and there were deep gullies that had been scored into them by the sea over the years, very deep, probably twice a man's height in some places, and great thick kelp would grow over the surface of these. Well, at low water spring tides, my father would walk up these gullies with a hook, with just a piece of 1/4-inch rod with a 90-degree bend in it, about 3 feet long, and he would walk along these gullies flipping the kelp weed up to try and find holes in the sides of the gullies, decent big holes. A lot of the time they would be a little below the waterline. In fact, most of the time they would be. He would take me to do this, and I remember him wading around in his swimming costume. He'd have a plastic shopping bag tucked in the belt, probably wear sandals. He'd have this hook, and away we'd go, and I'd do my best to follow him, see what he did. Sometimes I would walk along the top of the gully and watch what he did. Anyway, so he would find a hole, feel around under the waterline, find this hole, and then he would slide the punga hook into the hole and rattle it around until he heard the sound of the crab shell. You need to angle that up a bit. There, nodding on. So he would slide this hook up one of these holes and rattle around in there until he heard the sound. There's a difference in the resonance. So he would find one of these crabs, and the idea with this 90-degree hook is he would then slide the 90-degree hook over the back of the shell and turn it like a key, so it was hooked behind the crab. So far so good, no problem. Got to do all this without being able to see what you're doing. A bit like the catfish noodling. That reminds me a little bit of it. Anyway, now comes the brave bit. Cold water, you can't really feel your fingers. He would then slide the other hand down the hook until he felt an elbow on the crab, and then pull both out at the same time. Flip it up onto the rocks, usually inverted at my feet, so you can imagine how impressive that was for a boy of say 8 years old. And these crabs, they were Dungeness crabs. It's not far from Dungeness, this place. They're actually, we would call them punga crabs, but they're actually Dungeness crabs. Fantastic eating, better than lobster, the claw meat. And we would, I can remember seeing him with a shopping bag or two, straining at the handle with these enormous things. I mean, some of them, they were almost as big as a dinner plate across the shell. Very impressive. So again, another definitely collecting wild edibles there. I mean, and he was certainly very much into that. And again, I've got to credit him with the beginning of my love for the outdoors. So I hope that's done it justice, Victor. I hope I didn't waffle on too long there. I just had to share one, and I'm glad actually that I have those experiences down and recorded, because the cameraman happens to be my son, who of course I introduced to fishing and sailing, and I guess it all kind of rolls on down the line there. But it's just going to be good, I think, for people to see it in the future, to hear the stories. I almost forgot. I'd like to tag Silverbear Bushcraft and CheezeHead Chris. It's another channel I've just recently become familiar with. Both great channels, check them out. So the question is, as I understand it, when did you first become aware that the outdoors was for you? Thanks for watching.